Hello everyone, my name is Holger and this is another video on the WoT Show Theory channel, which is dedicated to analysis and theory crafting about the Wheel of Time TV show. This video is my second update to my first Season 3 prediction video that I released in April. In this video I'm including all of the information we have received since the teaser trailer. This means the first look still images, the Tenshiko images, Matt's video, and of course the full trailer and the new 11-minute sneak peek of the episode 1 cold open. I will not repeat all of the predictions from my earlier videos, so if you have not watched them yet, then you'll probably want to watch them before watching this video. Also, this video is not a full scene-by-scene breakdown of the trailer. For that I recommend the video released by Lauren from Unraveling the Pattern. In my video I concentrate on combining information from multiple sources, including the full trailer and also the recent cold open sneak peek, to come up with more comprehensive episode storylines and timelines, and to update predictions. In this video I will only look at events in Valon. This means events from the first few episodes. I've been working on updates for all of the other locations as well, but I've run out of time and wanted to get the Valon update out first because of the upcoming fan screening this weekend. I'll try to release an update for the other locations in a separate video next week. But first a spoiler warning. This video does contain spoilers for the complete book series. I recommend that before watching this video you watch the first 2 seasons of the TV show and read all 14 books, plus the prequel New Spring. So let's get started. Since I'm trying to reconstruct timelines, I will especially focus on the 11-minute cold open sneak peek and the still images first, because for some of those we not only have the episode number, but also the time code. This means the point in time within the episode when the photo was taken. So first let's talk about this amazing cold open. I am not going through this scene by scene. I'm sure Lauren will do that in his video. I'll mostly concentrate on how that scene affects the plot. First there's this comment by Moraine and Lan, she'll be alright, and today isn't about her, obviously referring to Nynaeve. This is the first suggestion we have that only Nynaeve went back to the tower, not Egwene or Elaine. Otherwise Lan would say they'll be alright, or specifically refer to Nynaeve by name. I'll get back to this point a little later, and to the question where Egwene and Elaine are in episode 1. Then there's this shot of what I thought was the Hall of Servants in the Age of Legends. Clearly that was wrong, and Rob from Malkiel Talks was actually correct about this. There was a big debate about this on the podcast Three.Wheeling. It is nice to see that the tower set has finally been expanded. We see that the proceedings are initiated by Swan, not Liandrin, which is a bit different from what was originally suggested, and really makes more sense. I still believe that Swan and Moraine have likely known for some time that Liandrin is black, so Nynaeve did not really give Swan any new information, but only forced her hand. And Swan now also has a witness who is not a member of the Blue Arger. Varen claims that she has been asked to protect items. Of course, being black, Varen can lie, but it is unlikely that she lies here, because such a lie is too easy to expose and would then uncover her. I'm also wondering whether this means that Swan suspected that there would be an open fight that would somehow endanger the 13th depository. If so, then it seems strange that she did not make more preparations. The Aes Sedai appear very flat-footed to me the moment the Black Archer sisters step forward and attack them. Then there's the revelation that Naomi is Black Archer. I did not expect that because I thought that Varen would have known about that and not trusted her. However, now it looks like Varen may have just faked that trust in order to maintain her own cover. What I find particularly intriguing is that the memory wipe weave Naomi uses appears to work on Adelias but not on Varen, at least not fully, because Varen recognizes Adelias, but Adelias does not recognize Varen. I wonder what causes that difference. Either Naomi fakes part of the weave on Varen, knowing that Varen is Black Archer, to maintain Varen's cover, or Varen expects this action from Naomi because she knows that Naomi is also Black Archer, and Varen has some kind of countermeasure in place that protects her. It looks like there's a second weave around Varen, a fiery spiraling weave that seems to come from Varen, so this could be what prevented Naomi's weave from fully taking hold. Of course, it is also possible that Varen truly was surprised, and that Naomi somehow slipped through her Black Archer investigations, but to me that would be the least interesting explanation. If Varen did know that Naomi is Black Archer, then she may even have decided to sacrifice her own sister here in order to maintain her cover. In the books, Varen states that she had to do terrible things for the Black Archer in order to maintain her cover, but we never really find out what they were. It looks like in the show we may be getting an early glimpse of that. Regardless, I expect it will be a long time until viewers find out exactly what happened here. The show will have to keep this a secret until the reveal that Valon is Black Archer. So it turns out that we do get to see a raid on the Terran storeroom after all by Naomi, except in the show it happens after the Liandrin scene, and also in the show that storeroom happens to be the 13th depository. That seems like a reasonable way to merge two different tower locations. Other interesting points of this part of the trailer are the bracers. The most obvious explanation is that these are part of the domination band from later in the series, which makes me wonder whether in the show they are somehow part of the Tower's plan of controlling the Dragon Reborn. The only objection to this theory is that I don't see a collar here, so I'm not sure how this would work. Perhaps the different pieces of a domination band were deliberately stored in different locations to make it harder for one person to steal all of them. Maybe another part of this is in Tenchiko, and some of the Aes Sedai know that, and that is how the hunt for Liandrin shifts to Tenchiko later. Another fun nod to the books is the set of connected dice, which in the books is among the items stolen by the Black Archer on their raid of the storeroom. Same thing for a disc with a spiral engraving. And we also might be seeing Vora Sangreal here, at least this rod seems to match the description. And of course the most remarkable part of the 13th depository is a twisted redstone door frame. Both snakes and foxes are clearly visible in the decorations. This is interesting because it suggests that the doorframe may lead to both races, which is different from the books, where there are separate doorframes for snakes and foxes. I don't necessarily expect this particular doorframe in the tower to play any role this season, because I have a hard time imagining Matt making his way into the 13th depository. Also, this would have to happen early in the season, before the Tenchiko journey, which seems too early for such an event. And if he really were to have that trip before Tenchiko, then he should be wearing his fox head medallion in images from Tenchiko, which he clearly does not. He does in a new poster though, which suggests that he will get his medallion this season, probably from the Fin, but likely at a later time in Tenchiko. So overall I think the specific redstone doorframe in the 13th depository is more of an Easter egg, but it might play a role in a later season. If we do eventually get the scene of someone, perhaps Moraine, pushing Lanfear through this door, then that scene may happen in the White Tower. Then there's the setup of the confrontation in the hall. I had already suggested in an earlier video that the reason for Swan being deposed will likely be that she mishandled Liandrin's capture, using it for political gain, and is therefore partially culpable for the deaths of some sisters. It now looks like that is probably correct, because the show is clearly suggesting that Swan is acting politically here, by supposedly having a plan for the Reds, locking them out of the sitting, which is highly problematic considering that in the show the Red are supposed to be the law enforcement Arja, so they should be present any time any person is indicted for wrongdoing. To be fair though, one Red Arja sister does state that she would stand with Liandrin against any charges, without even knowing what the charges are, so the current political situation does not seem to be entirely Swan's fault. Swan also limits the sitting to only 11 sitters, which is likely the setup for later having Elida depose Swan with only 11 sitters. Liandrin's accusations against Swan are mostly correct, except for her assertion that Mother willingly let Rand escape, which is likely not true, although Liandrin might think it is, so it would not count as a lie. I like the way the show is setting up the escape of the Black Archer sisters. Going to the docks seems like the most logical plan, and so is Swan's attempt to make sure that their sisters do not leave the city. All of this makes sense, and is somewhat reminiscent of how in the books Swan tried to keep Matt from leaving the city. The main difference, of course, is that in the case of Matt, it was sufficient to just give his description to the guards at the gates and docks, but in order to prevent Black Archer sisters from leaving, it is necessary for Aes Sedai to actually be present at the gates and docks, so the Black Archer sisters cannot fight their way out, and we see that being set up here. I think this nicely sets up the possibility of some of the Black Archer sisters going undercover in the city, since they cannot leave it, which could then lead to the girls searching for Liandrin in the city. Liandrin herself will likely be able to leave Tar Valon though, because she works for Lanfear, and Lanfear can transport others via true power traveling, as she did with Matt in Season 2. That may be how Liandrin ends up in Tenchiko. Whether other Black Archer sisters leave the same way remains to be seen. Looking at that final scene of Alanna confronting the Black Archer sisters, it is clear from the way Alanna and her warders are positioned, and from the background, that this is the beginning of the Alanna scene that was included in the teaser and trailer, with Alanna tearing up the street to attack an opponent. What is interesting, though, is the different sun angle, lighting, and color grading. In the teaser scene, the sun is right of center, and in the finished scene, it is left of center. It looks like the scene may have been completely reshot very recently, because the original scene from the teaser was not usable, and I think I know why. Amazon apparently had difficulties integrating the VFX portion of the shot with the live portion, because there's a visible brightness difference at the boundary between the VFX and live areas, with the edges changing position in different frames, making the shot look very unprofessional. We don't know what caused that visual defect, but one possibility is that the live shot took place on wet streets after the rain at the beginning of the episode, and the original VFX did not account for that. That may explain why the whole scene apparently had to be reshot. With that in mind, it is interesting that the 11-minute sneak peek cuts off at exactly this point, and I'm wondering whether the reason for that is that Amazon's post-production team was still finalizing the integration of the special effects for that part of the scene. This marks the end of the sneak peek, so I'll start looking at still pictures from this point on to help establish timelines. Our first timed still photo of episode 1 after the cold open is this photo of Rand, Matt, and Perrin in Tar Valon, apparently in a bar that is open to the streets of Tar Valon. This happens 22 minutes into episode 1. We see Perrin with now permanently golden eyes, and Rand apparently enjoying himself. There are several shots in the trailer and in Matt's video that all seem to be part of the same scene. For example, this shot with Matt waving the horn of Valyr and having his portrait drawn, and drinking ale with Rand and Perrin. Then there's this shot from the trailer which seems to show the artist drawing Matt, and Rand looking down. He does not appear to look at Matt's portrait, which is propped up on the easel, but to a point somewhere further to his left and down, so possibly to something lying on the table. It will be interesting to find out what he's looking at. Perhaps the horn of Valyr after Matt has put it down to have a drink. The next still is Lanfear in Tar Valon at the 28-minute mark of episode 1. Not much to see here, but the door matches one we have seen before in season 1, when Moraine was looking for Perrin. That does not necessarily mean that Lanfear is in the same in-story location, though. The crew might have just reused part of the Tar Valon set for a different purpose. One of the more interesting stills is this photo of Elaine and Avienda having drinks together, 44 minutes into episode 1. This means pretty late in the episode. Elaine is not in a novice or accepted dress, so this image cannot be in the tower. It has to be in the city of Tar Valon, probably in an inn. This image is important because it helps establish a timeline for Elaine, and specifically if or when during episode 1 she can be in the tower. I'll get back to that later. There's also the question why Egwene is not with the two of them, because so far Egwene has been Elaine's drinking buddy. And of course we have one more still from episode 1, but this one does not have a time code, so we don't know at what time in the episode it occurs. It is of Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve on horseback, dressed very ornately. It looks like all of them are full Aes Sedai, and Egwene may even be the Amyrlin. Madeline Madden, the actress playing Egwene, commented on this photo in an Instagram post, linking it to an accepted test. The photo also seems to be linked to this shot from the trailer, showing all three girls riding along the river that leads north from the Two Rivers village, the same river we saw in Season 1, Episode 2. Also in apparently the same location we see Rand with long hair, so the girls are probably on their way to find Rand. This may or may not be related to the accepted test from the books, where Egwene as Amyrlin needs to order Rand to be stilled. Before looking at the remainder of Episode 1, I need to discuss one still image from Episode 2, because that helps establish the overall timeline. It is this image of Morghese and Elida arriving in the White Tower. It happens near the beginning of the episode, about 6 minutes in. The hallway shown here has appeared in a show before, in Season 1, and we know that the hall of the tower lies behind the viewer. This means in the direction Morghese and Elida are looking. Interestingly, Gawain, Galad, and Gabriel are not in the scene, and neither is Elaine. Morghese's crown matches the crown Elaine wears in the scene of the teaser, so it probably is the same crown. That means we can assume that Elaine will be in the tower at some point after the scene with Morghese, probably in episode 2 or 3. We don't necessarily know whether she will be in the tower earlier. Also, since Elaine wears her novice dress in the scene, we definitely know that Elaine will not be raised to accepted during episode 1, which is crucial for establishing the timeline. Back to episode 1 and the picture of Elaine and Avienda. From this picture we know that Elaine is definitely not in the tower at the 44-minute mark. Since she is still a novice here, as we just found out, she really could not have been in the tower earlier either. That's because novices are not allowed to just leave the tower, and it is hard to imagine that Elaine would break the rules and sneak out, risking expulsion, as we found out from Nynaeve in Season 2, for something as frivolous as having a few drinks. So the next question is, why did Elaine not go to the tower at the beginning of Episode 1 with Nynaeve? It would have been natural for her to return to her regular tower life after the events in Falm. The most obvious answer is exactly the point Nynaeve has made, that in the show the punishment for leaving the tower is expulsion, and of course Elaine has already snuck out of the tower in Season 2 to follow Egwene and Nynaeve, so Elaine has every reason to believe that she may have been expelled. This also affects Egwene, so Egwene is most likely not in the tower before the 44-minute mark either. It would be difficult for the show to explain why Egwene does go back to the tower earlier in Episode 1, but Elaine does not. Elaine has been fiercely loyal to Egwene and has shown that she's not afraid of sharing punishment, so it would be completely out of character for her to let Egwene go to the tower on her own and potentially face punishment. For both of the girls to not be in the tower at the beginning of the season would also be consistent with Lan saying she'll be alright earlier, referring only to Nynaeve. This gets us back to a question I talked about in my last video, and that is whether Egwene's accepted test is real or just a dream. I thought at the time that it would be a dream in Episode 4 in Kodrak's Hold, but that theory is no longer viable now that we know that the picture with the 3 girls on horseback is from Episode 1. There's the possibility that Egwene dreams about the accepted test in Episode 1 though, so we need to figure out whether that is the case, or whether the test is real. Let's first assume it's real. For that Egwene would have to be in the tower in Episode 1. The earliest point this could happen is after the 44-minute mark, because when Egwene goes to the tower, potentially facing punishment, Elaine would always go with her, and we know that that does not happen before the 44-minute mark. The problem is now that this results in very tight timing. After that 44-minute mark, there would have to be a scene showing the reason why Egwene does go back, then probably a short debriefing scene with Swan, and then the actual test. That would leave at most 12 to 15 minutes of time for Egwene's accepted test. For comparison, Nynaeve's test in Season 2 took 26 minutes. There are actually several problems with the idea that the accepted test is real. One is tight timing. The second one is Rima Tewiata's comment about Sheriam not fitting into the Season 3 storyline that I talked about in earlier videos. Also, there's the question of overall timing. Episode 1 has already spent 15 minutes on the Black Archer battle, then some time on the scenes in the bar and the inn. Also, we have not seen Moraine or Lan yet, except in that brief moment during the Black Archer battle. The 2 top-billed actors can certainly expect at least 15 minutes of screen time in the opening episode of a new season, and since we have not seen them with the other characters, most of that screen time will probably be exclusive for them. I'll talk more about possible Lan Moraine stories in a moment. If we now allocate another 15 minutes just for Egwene, then this would leave us with only about 15 minutes for all other scenes of the other main characters, plus the battle aftermath in the tower, plus Forsaken scenes. That simply does not seem to be enough time for an inciting incident episode. The way I see it, the show simply cannot afford to give Egwene 15 minutes of screen time in the opening episode of a season, especially for scenes that do not even happen in the real world and that do nothing to advance her storyline in Season 3. Those 15 minutes are better spent in other ways. So what's the alternative? Here's what I think is a more likely scenario. Egwene and Elaine never actually enter the tower, at least in Episode 1, because they have been expelled, or assume they have. The accepted test scenes of Egwene that we have seen are just part of a dream in response to Egwene having been denied the real test. From a character arc point of view, this makes much more sense. Tower stories and accepted tests would have fit into Season 2 for Egwene, but not into Season 3. For Season 3, it is much more important to get Egwene onto her dreaming story arc, and to give her a strong reason to leave the tower and go to the Isle Waste. Becoming an accepted of the tower would be counterproductive for that. Setting up Egwene's dreaming story arc is especially important because we now have a hint that it will begin before she enters the Waste, not after, as I had originally thought. The hint is this scene in the trailer in which Egwene appears to meet Bear and Teleran Riot, similar to a scene in the books. The scene probably takes place before Rand's group heads out to the Waste. Also, having that accepted test scene happen only in a dream would require much less screen time than a real accepted test, since the show would then not have to repeat all of the ceremony related to accepted tests, and could even skip the first 2 parts of her test and just show us the most important third part. This means the part about her future. So this raises the question how Egwene's dreaming and Teleran Riot character arc will start. Here's my theory on this. I already mentioned that Moraine and Lan have not been shown anywhere in Tar Valon in any of the videos or images past the Black Archer battle, so we don't know what they're up to. Also, the scenes with the boys hanging out in a bar give me distinct vibes of when the cat's away, the mice will play. I cannot imagine Matt waving around that horn if Moraine was nearby. So then where is the cat? I think Moraine and Lan probably leave Tarvalon sometime after the Black Archer battle, and only return in episode 2. Also, I think Egwene likely goes with them, which is why we have not seen much of her either, except for one brief clip in the bar, but we don't know if that is in episode 1 or 2. So where are Moraine, Lan, and Egwene going? My guess is Varen's place. This means Tiffin's Well. Especially after what happened to Adelias during the Black Archer battle, I could see Varen wanting to go home to care for his sister, and Moraine, Lan, and Egwene may go with him. Moraine may want to go to Varen's place for research reasons, especially with all of the new information at the end of Season 2 about the Seanchan and the Forsaken. And Egwene would likely go with Moraine, since she likes to learn and really has nothing else to do. Egwene not being in Tarvalon would also explain why we don't see her in the photo of Elaine having drinks with Aviendha. Having Egwene at Varen's place would be a great way to start Egwene's Teleron story arc, because it would give Varen a chance to give Egwene the Dream Ring ter'angreal, especially considering that Varen has just been to the 13th Depository and could easily have grabbed the ring from there. As for Elaine, she probably does not enter the tower during episode 1 either, for the same reason. This means because she has been expelled. Once Morghese comes to the tower and Siuan tells her that Elaine ran away, then came back, and now has been expelled, Morghese will probably just hit the roof and demand Elaine's immediate reinstatement as a novice, and Siuan will likely summon Elaine back. We've seen Elaine here in the Amyrlin study, which may be the scene in which Siuan tells her that she has now been given a second chance, but that there won't be a third chance. There's one fun option coming out of this storyline, and for that we have to go back to the photo of Elaine and Aviendha having drinks together. This theme seems to lead up to a chapter from the Shadow Rising called A Cup of Wine, in which Elaine drinks only one cup of wine, except that cup keeps getting refilled, and Elaine gets very drunk, with a bad hangover afterwards. In the show this could of course happen in Tanchico, but imagine it happens right here in Tarvalon, while Elaine is drinking with Aviendha. Then Elaine gets called to the tower, Nynaeve has to quickly sober her up, and Elaine has to confront Siuan and Morghese with the worst imaginable hangover. This pretty much wraps up the discussion of episode 1. There are several more scenes that could be in episode 1, but might also be in episode 2. This includes Ben and Shea talking to Rand, wondering whether he's the Karakhan. Also, multiple brief indoor scenes set in an inn in Tarvalon, including the Maiden's Kiss scene from Matt's video, 2 different scenes with Lan and Nynaeve, and a scene with Rand receiving leadership advice from Elaine. And then there's Rand's Bubble of Evil. I had originally thought that this might be the final scene in episode 1. However, it now seems that the person lying on the bed is probably Egwene, and since I don't expect Egwene to be in the inn at the end of episode 1, the Bubble of Evil scene is more likely to happen in episode 2. The way the show will probably handle this is that Rand and Moraine assume that the event was an attack by one of the Forsaken, and that Rand therefore needs to leave Tarvalon. So this event could be the inciting incident for Rand's group to head to the Isle Waste. This takes us to episode 2. I think the cold open is a scene in the Caemlyn throne room that was included in the trailer. There are 2 shots in this scene. One of them is a closer shot that shows Morghese to be pregnant, and notably she's not wearing her crown. A different moment in time from the same shot also shows a person who I believe is Elida. I'm not 100% certain, since the face is mostly turned away from the camera, but the chin, forehead, and hairline looks like a good match with the other Elida seen from the trailer. Also, we know that Chore Ogdajlu, the actress playing Elida, was on set in a location where the scene was shot. The second shot has a wider angle and shows a banner of a house, probably a house of Andor. It is not absolutely clear which house this is, but the sigil seems to match House Baron best. It could also be a completely fictional house invented just for the show. Also in the picture is Linny. Her outfit precisely matches that of a photo that leaked from production a long time ago. I'm not showing it here because the leak was unauthorized and the photo was quickly removed. With her are 2 children, a boy on her right and a baby on her left. Based on the age of the children and the state of Morghese's pregnancy, it seems that the older boy is Galad, the baby is Gawain, and Morghese is pregnant with Elaine. This also gives us an estimate for the point in time of this scene. It appears to be a flashback to approximately the end of the Isle War. This means right around the time when Rand was born. So what is being shown here? Morghese not wearing her crown is interesting, and there have been suggestions that the scene is her coronation. I don't believe that for 2 reasons. First, the timeline does not match. In the books, Morghese was crowned much earlier, around the time Galad was born. Also, it would be unusual for only one house to be present during a coronation. I would expect either no houses at all or all of the major houses to be present. Favoring one house would not be smart politics for Morghese. So what do we see here then? The presence of the children and Morghese not wearing her crown suggests that this is not a state function, but some kind of private matter. Another point to note is that Sarah Nakamura, the book expert and consultant in Rafe's team, was on a Dusty Wheel livestream discussing the trailer, and she gave a trigger warning for this scene, but without stating the reason for it. Since there are children present here, it seems likely that the trigger warning is about something that happens to the children, which would also support the idea that this is a private matter, not a state function. But then why is there an Andorran house present? My guess is that all of this is related to Galad. We already know from an Amazon press release that Galad Demodred has been renamed to Galad Trakand in the show. What if he has not only been renamed, but if part of his backstory has been changed as well, and he's now connected to this house we see here in some way? We don't know exactly what that means. For example, if Tarangale is still his father, but I think in this scene we see some event related to Galad becoming a member of House Trakand. This could be a hostage situation similar to Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones, but it could also be something much more benign. Perhaps Tarangale has died and Morghese now adopts Galad. There are many possible variations of what exactly could be taking place here. There's one more aspect of the scene, and that is that it apparently takes place close to the time of Rand's birth. I don't think this is a coincidence, nor is the presence of Elida. This is an opportunity for the show to include one of Elida's foretellings about Rand, specifically the one which in the books happens in Caemlyn, when Elida meets Rand in person. I think in the show we may see the same foretelling, but the trigger is not Elida seeing Rand, but rather Rand's birth, which happens right at the moment when the scene with Galad takes place. This would be a direct parallel to Gitara Moroso's foretelling about Rand that we saw in Season 2, Episode 7. In both cases we would see a foretelling about Rand at the moment of his birth, included in a cold open. So much about the cold open. After the title screen we will probably get this scene of Elida arriving in Tar Valon. I have already talked about that, and sometime after that Elaine will enter the tower. The only other still image we have for Episode 2 is this photo of Rand and Lan sword training. We don't have a time code for it. It is similar to a scene from the teaser that also shows Rand and Lan sword training. It establishes that Rand, Egwene, Lan, and Moraine leave Tar Valon no later than Episode 2. Also noteworthy, Rand does have a new sword, and it seems to be Lan's old sword, which carries an inscription from Agelmar. The other major event I expect to happen in Episode 2 is to set up the reason for Perrin's journey to the Two Rivers. I expect Perrin's group to leave at around the same time as Rand's group, because Aviendha, Bane, and Sheard need to come to an agreement about who goes with Perrin and who goes with Rand, and for that they would have to know that both of them are leaving Tar Valon. Because of that, Perrin's inciting incident has to happen by Episode 2. This means he needs to find out that there are White Cloaks heading to the Two Rivers, threatening his family or friends. The big question is where that information comes from. This is not a trivial matter, because everyone in our group is in Tar Valon, and Tar Valon is not exactly a favorite hangout spot for White Cloaks, so Perrin has very few options for finding out about White Cloak plans here. The best is probably through Galad. In my previous videos, I had already suggested that Galad may already be a White Cloak going into Season 2, who was pulled off his duty by Morghese at the beginning of Season 3, so he could accompany her to Tar Valon. This is one of the few scenarios in which a White Cloak would be welcome in Tar Valon, if he also happens to be a Prince of Andor and part of a royal entourage. This is probably what we will see, and while in the White Tower, Galad then just talks about his plans to hunt down the dangerous Darkfriend Perrin Ibarra, and to go after his family in the Two Rivers. Assuming the right people hear that, they could then tell Perrin. This info could, for example, come from Nynaeve, Elaine, Min, Matt, Lan, or Alana, all of whom may be in the White Tower at some point in the first 2 episodes. It is possible that this happens as part of Galad's sparring scenes, but it could also be separate from them. One open question is why Alana joins Perrin on his journey, which seems likely, as I will show in a later video when I get to the Two Rivers story. We don't know why Alana makes that decision. It is possible that she's the person who hears about Galad's plans and tells Perrin, but there could also be other reasons. For example, Moraine might ask Alana to go with Perrin. Then we have several scenes which are likely in the early part of the season, but we don't necessarily know the exact episode. most likely episode 2 or 3 though. This includes Matt being with the novice in the tower from Matt's video and a similar shot from the trailer. Also all of the scenes with Galad and others in the sparring area of the tower. There are many of those, and none of them include any characters that leave with Rand's or parents' groups, which means that those are not necessarily in episode 2. There are also strong hints here that we will get the Gawain-Galad quarterstaff fight in this context, because we have Galad, Matt, quarterstaffs and swords all together in one place. Possibly even Gawain, although that is hard to say. There are some other events that will likely happen around the same time in episode 2 or 3, but we don't have any images for them. This includes Elaida trying to get an audience with Swan by talking to Leanne, based on an audition script we have seen. Elaida deciding to stay in the tower instead of returning to Andor with Morghese. Gawain presumably deciding to stay in the tower, perhaps to become a warder or to look after Elaine. Also at some point Morghese and Galad will decide to leave, because I don't think either of them are likely to stay around for Elaida's coup. That pretty much covers the first few episodes in Tar Valon. We don't really have any information about Tower or Tar Valon events after that. Amazon has been very careful to not even hint at the coup or any later events. The trailer does have a very indirect hint that Moiraine will likely be in the tower at the end of the season after the Isle Waste events that Amazon apparently put there by mistake, and I will cover that in the next video. We're coming to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know in comments where you agree or disagree. I should be able to get the second part of this update out within the next 10 days or so, with updates for Tanchico, the Two Rivers, and the Isle Waste. Thanks for watching, and that's it for now.